Hi everybody, Jeremy here from Video Editor Studio, and today I'm going to show you how to do that shadow transition in Davinci Resolve. So if you're ready, let's check it out. Alright, so we're in Davinci Resolve and now we're on the edit page, and I have already my two clips in my timeline. I've trimmed the excess right there to give them some handles. We can apply a transition. So here, do the same thing, make sure to trim that excess right there so you can apply the transition. Otherwise, it will prompt open a window asking you if you want to trim, and it will just trim automatically for you. Now I'm gonna simply click in between my click, and then I'm gonna hit Command T to bring a dissolve transition, but you could also just go over to Effect, Video Transition, and take an additive dissolve and directly drag it here in between your two clips. Now let's just right click on it, and then we're gonna convert it to a Fusion Cross Dissolve. That enables us to open it in Fusion, but we need to go to Fusion through this button right here. If you try to go directly here from the tab, it will not appear, so just make sure that you select here your transition, and then that you just click that button to go over to Fusion, and now we can see our cross dissolve. As you can see here, it's in a group, so if we open it, we have our dissolve. So we're gonna simply right click on it and ungroup it, just so it's simple to have only the dissolve node. And as you can see, we have our media in 1, which is our first footage, and then we have the media in 2, which is our second footage. And here, if we check our media out and bring that to full view, we have the dissolve basically applied, making the transition between the two. We're gonna alter that dissolve to help us create our transition. As you can see, the dissolve is happening during the entire composition, but us, we want it to happen only in the middle. So for that, we're gonna here adjust the anim curve. We're gonna go over to modifier, and then here we're gonna just switch from linear to custom. Then I'm gonna select the first point right there, and here we're gonna select 0.49. And then I'm gonna select the second point, and here we're gonna select 0.5. And now what's happening, instead of having the dissolve throughout the entire composition, it's happening only here in the middle. We're switching in the middle of the composition from one clip to the other. That's what we're gonna be using for the base of our transition. Now here, let's just make some space and move on to the next step. The first thing I want to do is here bring a background in my working area and link the output of that background to the dissolve. Then we're just gonna go to the background and select a rectangular mask. We're gonna change the width value of the mask to 1, and we're gonna change the height value to 2. So it covers the entirety of our screen. Now we're just gonna bring the soft edge to the maximum. And now we're basically gonna create an animation with that rectangle position to make it seem like we're just passing the camera behind a person, a pole, or whatever it might be, to create that shadow that will switch from one shot to the other one. So right now, let's just double click on it to reset it to 0. And we're gonna right click on it and go to modify with XY path. Then we go to modifier, and then here in modifier, we're simply gonna remove the two keyframes that have been placed, and we're gonna right click on the X and then go to modify with anim curve. Now here, I'm gonna first start by changing the curve from linear to easing, and then we're gonna choose scene for the in and scene for the out. And as you can see, we have an automated animation that go across the frame, but still we need to adjust some things so it's completely out of the frame at the beginning and completely out of the frame at the end. To do that, we're gonna change the scale. I'm gonna put the scale at 3, which basically increase the amount of distance that the center of the rectangle has to travel. So the best way to show you that will be to unzoom and that you see that green line. Here, as you can see, if I'm reducing the scale, the rectangle have less distance to travel. And if I'm increasing that scale, the rectangle have more distance to travel within the time of the composition. So at 0, it will always be at the beginning of that green line. And at the 24 frame, it will always be at the end, no matter the distance that has to be traveled. So it's a bit of trial and error to find the sweet spot that will just hide at the perfect moment where there is the switch happening between the footage. So me, I've already done that homework and I know what are the value to input. So there will be here the scale at 3. And then here adjusting the offset, which is where the animation is starting. So here, if I'm adjusting the offset, as you can see, we're basically moving the starting point of that animation. And so here I've tried different thing, and what seems to work is -1. And as you can see, when we're basically arriving at frame 12, we have a rectangle that is covering entirely our frame to just hide the switch between the first clip and the second one. Now let's just click zoom to fit here so we can see a bit more what we're doing. So if we play it, we're getting somewhere right here, but we're gonna need to make some adjustment to make it a bit smoother. The next adjustment I want to make is a fade to black to just help basically make that transition a bit smoother, and having that coming not only here from the left side, but also the entire clip being dimmed in terms of brightness. To do that, we're gonna bring a background, and then we're gonna hit shift space on our keyboard, and we're gonna search for a brightness node and bring that in. Then I'm gonna link the output of that brightness node to the dissolve. And then here in the brightness node, we're gonna select the alpha channel, right click on gain and go to modify with and in curve. We're gonna go to the modifier, and then here we're gonna adjust the curve to be the same as the first one. So we're gonna go to easing and select a scene curve for the in and a scene curve for the out. And then here the effect is too strong, so we're gonna go to scale and bring it to 1. Which means that here if we were to go back to tool, basically the gain gonna go only from 0 to 1 and not gonna go up to 5. That's where we have that control. So here let's just go back to modifier, and as you can see, it doesn't have yet the result that we want, because right now it's increasing slowly from frame 0 to frame 24 to have basically here 0 opacity and then having a full solid at the end. We want to change that by taking here mirror, and what it's gonna do is that the opacity that we keyframe here, the gain slider is going up, making it a solid when it reaches 1, and then it decreases from 1 to 0 and reveal the second clip. Now it's getting better, but to make it even more convincing, we're gonna add some movement to create some sort of parallax look, like we're just hiding behind something and the footage is moving as well. To do that, we're gonna bring 2 transform between the media in 2 and the dissolve, and the media in 1 and the dissolve. So here let's just select the first one, media in 1, hit shift space on our keyboard, search for transform node and bring that in. Here in the transform node, we're gonna go to center, right click on it, and then we're gonna go with modify with XY path, go to the modifier, remove the 2 keyframe, and then here we're gonna right click on the X and go to modify with and in curve. Now let's change the curve to easing, select scene and scene, so we keep something consistent throughout the transition. And then here is the same as before when I explained about the rectangle. You basically have to play around with the scale, the offset, and maybe the time offset to get the result that you want and get the timing right. It's a bit tricky to explain, it's not really straightforward, it's just trial and error and see what works, what doesn't. In our case, I've already tried before, so here I know that the value for the scale is 1.5, then the offset is 0.5, and then here the time offset is 0.2. And as you can see, when our shadow rectangle come into place, the footage starts to move as well out of the frame. Now we're gonna repeat the same process with the second clip. So I'm gonna select media 2, hit shift space on our keyboard. We're gonna bring here the transform node again, go to center, right click, modify with XY path, go to the modifier, remove the 2 keyframe point, go to X, right click, modify with and in curve. Then here, same again, we're gonna just switch from linear to easing, scene curve, and then here the scale will be 1.5, the offset -1, and the time offset will be -0.2. And now we've basically built the core of the transition. We can still make some modification here to stylize it a little bit. The first one is that here, if the fade to black is too strong for your taste, you can always go to background and then here reduce the alpha channel to have it less strong. So that will just have for effect to make it a bit less strong. But as you can see here, as a result, it just doesn't hide properly the movement, the displaced movement that we have animated on the transform. So a quick way to work around that is here to go to the transform, and then we can change the edges to mirror. And right now I've done it for the transform 2, but you can also do it for the transform 1, and basically right there, here, it will just fill up that gap and it will prevent you to run into that issue of having no footage to show on the edges if your timing is not perfectly right. So it's just a great way to have a safe margin. Another stylization that I would like to add is to have a RGB split or chromatic aberration. To do that, I'm simply here gonna select my dissolve. I'm gonna go over to template, and then here in template, I want to search for chromatic aberration, and bring that template in. For whatever reason, I cannot find it by doing Shift space. It doesn't seem to be registered as a tool because it's in the Fusion template, I believe. But anyway, just drag that in, and then you can just unlink the output of your dissolve and link it to the chromatic aberration, and then link the output of the chromatic aberration to the merge. And now we basically have this control that allows us to just create a RGB split. I didn't know about this until a few weeks ago when a viewer just commented that this exists, and that's actually really helpful. So feel free to share if you have any tips, because I'm also taking all those tips and I still have a lot to learn about Davinci Resolve. Anyway, we're gonna animate that slider right here. So to do that, I'm gonna simply right click on it and go to modify with, and in curve, we're gonna go to the modifier. Here, same, we're gonna change the curve to easing and switch to scene and scene. And then same thing as the fade black, we're gonna tick mirror, so the chromatic aberration is just coming into place when the displacement is happening, and then it just remove itself once we've reached the final placement. And that's pretty much it. Now we're done. Just for that kind of transition, it seems to be pretty fast. So here I'm just gonna go to our edit page, and I'm gonna make the duration 3 seconds just to give it a bit more time. And here we go. I'm happy with that result. If you want to save that transition, you can simply right click on it and create transition preset. Now you can just rename it shadow transition, save it, and now you can simply look for it in your video transition, search shadow, it's just popping up right there. You can take it, drag it, and adjust the timing as you want. And that's pretty much it. Hope this video was helpful. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know in a comment what kind of video you would like to see next, and see you in the next one. Bye! Speed up your workflow and create better videos using the pack available on our website, including titles, transition, and templates built only for Davinci Resolve. Get started today by downloading our free starter pack that contains over 150 elements. Link in the description below or at videoeditorstudio.com.